publisher of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint newspaper, coming to you with our program from the desk of the editor. The Voice and Viewpoint, San Diego's oldest and now only African American publication, serving 87 zip codes, 17 cities, and unincorporated areas, available online free. You can download the app in the Google or Apple store. You may get the paper by subscription if you want to receive home copy, or you can pick it up in retail outlets or over the counter in a number of places. And so, with this being said, our goal is to make sure that we all understand that a people without a voice cannot be heard, and we're here to be a voice. I'm excited to be joined again this evening, partnering with Dr. Leonard Thompson as we make this open mic available and invite you to come in and talk with us. Dr. Thompson.
Well, Dr. Warren, it's again a pleasure to be here on a Wednesday night. I know that this is the day that the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad there in it. So much is going on around our country, and we want people to chime in tonight. You can call in at 858-251-6111. Again, 858-251-6111. Or you can catch us on Facebook, and you literally can put your question in the feed, and we will do our best to get to them and add you to the conversation. Dr. Warren, how are you doing tonight?
Well, we're doing great, Dr. Thompson. I want to start off by having a few moments of reflections on tremendous losses that we've had since last we talked. Jim Brown passed at the age of 87, stellar career in football and acting and in civil rights. He comes not far behind Harry Belafonte. These were giants that did so much for us, that their shoulders are the people we stand on. And then today we are aware of the fact that Tina Turner passed, and she had made such an outstanding contribution in spite of all of her challenges and hardships, and yet she persevered. We can be excited that she had a good life in her latter years. She was living in the Mediterranean and enjoying it, and I guess that was compensation for all of the abuse and hardship that she had. So those losses are on our minds. And then here in San Diego a few days ago, we lost one of the matron giants of our community, I consider, a lady by the name of Vira Williams, who passed at the age of 94, known to so many for her many ventures in her quiet way. She was the wife of the late Dr. Matthew Williams, but separate from that, she made her own contributions, and she was the one that would take people to Allentown on bus tours and to the Bill Pickett Rodeo, always pulling people together to give them that exposure beyond the borders of San Diego. She was the one who kept up with the Ebony Fashion Fair when others had abandoned the idea, and she still tried to keep things going. And so in the latter years, I tried to keep in touch with her, as with many of our older citizens, as I call them at intervals to just say hello and see how they're doing and let them know that they're not forgotten, even though they're no longer actively out there attending functions and doing many of the things that they would like to do. So I want to acknowledge those passings. I know we've had some others. Those were the ones that were most immediate on my mind. And it's a good time for people to realize that life is short, that you don't have maybe as much time as you think, and that you should be more reticent about how you use the time that you have in terms of peace and joy. And as you said at the beginning, realizing that each day is a day that the Lord has made, so that we do rejoice and be glad in it.
Well, Dr. Warren, one of the things about it is I never understood when I was growing up, but I understand now the whole premise of reading the obituaries, because you get so busy with life in general. Many times your friends have gone on, and you don't even know they've gone on because of the fact that you were in different places at different times, and you're now just catching up.
Well, younger people don't read the obituaries as older people do. When I was younger and in politics in D.C., my mother used to read the obits, and she used to call me every day and tell me who was in the Washington Post and who had passed. And so one day I just went and bought her a great big box of sympathy cards. Okay, so that she could just fill those, and that became her job to fill those cards out for me, and she would tell me who had passed because we had so many giants, and we didn't, when we're younger, we don't appreciate the older people in terms of things that they've done because we're seeing them in their more reserved, settled years as opposed to when they were out there being fiery, really doing things. And so it has always given me a sensitivity, and the church gives you a sensitivity to it because of the extended family that the church represents and how people really cared for each other. So church was more than a service; it was a family activity, and people where we find older folks today, they're family in churches. They're not just church members; they're family.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Dr. Warren, one of the things about it is that just learning how to love on our seniors is going to be an essence of that. I really believe that will strengthen our country and our nation. We have to learn to love on our seniors.
Oh, we do, and we seem to be a nation that we're absent at both ends. We don't respect and love the seniors, and we don't care enough about the children, and so we're all trying to live in the middle, and we know that that's disastrous. But these are choices that people make, and we can't force people to see what they haven't seen because so often they're blind until they get to that point that they get a chance to see.
Yeah, there was a saying that my mother always said, just keep living.
Yeah.
And just keep living. And so thank God I have lived this alone and I've learned a tremendous amount, but I'm yet still learning. And I understand what it means to respect your elders and to take the time and slow down enough just to check on them. It costs you nothing to pick up the telephone and just call and just say, hey, how are you doing? Is there anything I can do? Can I take a little bit of my time out of my schedule just to do something nice for you?
And I enjoy doing that. Just a few weeks ago, the George Stephen Senior Resource Center had an opportunity to honor seniors, and we did an article about this. I think there were at least three that were 100 and 102, 103. There were about 7 or 8 that were in their upper 90s, and they didn't even get to the 80s. They just dealt with the 90s and 100. And when they added up all the years of the people who were being honored, their total lifespans came to 1,870 some years. And so it was interesting to see people in their 90s, like one lady's in her 90s, and she's still doing triathlons, and she didn't start until she was in her 50s. So
Yeah.
you don't have to be old. You can be older, but you don't have to be old. It's a question of what you allow yourself to fall into. And so much of how we are when we are older is a reflection of how we lived when we were younger.
Yeah, Dr. Warren, as we look at, the things that are going on in our community and what we face, this weekend, I guess, is the official kickoff of summer.
Yes. We don't see it as much here in California, but on the East Coast, Memorial Day kicks off summer. The pool's open, the people go to the beach, and on Labor Day, it signals a close when ironically out here after September, it's going into October, we have some of our hottest days. And so we just have perpetual beach time on this day. And I often tell people on the East Coast that if it wasn't for the weather, we would know when the seasons change
Yeah.
because of how we are just perpetually, in a relaxed mode. So this is a busy weekend coming up. Lots of activities. We know we have a Kumba Fest, 4
Yeah.
days jumping off, and that's going to be something. We know we have Monday as a holiday, the 29th, the official Memorial Day. And I have a front page story in the paper this week showing how in 1865, it was the black freed Negroes of Charleston, South Carolina, that started the Memorial Day in spite of efforts by others and whites to steal the credit for it. It didn't become an official holiday in this country until 1971 when it became a holiday. But people need to know that what happened in Charleston, South Carolina was that they had a Union Army prison camp there at the racetrack. And the conditions of the Union soldiers was horrible in terms of how they lived. Over 256 of them died, and they were buried in a mass grave. When the war ended and the Confederate troops left, the black people of the community went out. They put flowers on the graves. The pastors had prayer over them. Some church people sung. And then the children came, and in a separate area from there, because they built an arch over the entrance to make it more like a cemetery. And then people came and sat on a grassy place and kind of had a picnic. And that started the whole celebration. And I think it's so important, because if we don't stop and look at where we've come from, we'll have everybody thinking that everything is about what the sale is. 50% off, Memorial Day sale, fireworks, beer, liquor, and all of that. And there's more to what we do than just putting coins in somebody's pocket.
Yeah, and I think that is a very very much important. Is that a lot of times we spend time with the holiday itself, but we don't spend time with the meaning of the holiday.
I'm on the air.
You know, the meaning of the holiday and what it's all about.
This is so true. I'm sorry, I just forgot to turn my phone off.
Yeah.
But let's help our people remember that, and we can do good deeds in terms of the holiday. We can find something good to do. We can find someone to help. Officially, we'll be closed at the Voice and Viewpoint, but that doesn't mean that everybody's got to go to the beach and get back, or run out to the mall for a shopping spree. But let's use our time and our dollars wisely.
Amen. Amen. We are getting some things. It seemed like today having a little bit of technical difficulties, but we're gonna get the mics right. So y'all just bear with us. All is well. All is well. Dr. Warren, I kind of want to jump into a subject, but before I jump into the subject, let's just talk about the political race at this point. A lot of things are happening. We had ventured to say that, or no, I'll say that you ventured to say that we didn't know if Nathan Fletcher was going to resign,
Right.
and so we had some discussion. Will it happen or wouldn't it happen? And to me, it was anticlimactic because I thought he would come up and make a statement and make an appearance, but it was all done in writing.
No, it was in writing, and so I was surprised because I thought there would be some resistance. So we don't know what the plans are or what's going to happen, but we know that chapter is in. There are other chapters going to be ending at the county in terms of. Have some other turnover there. So this is important at a time that budgets are being done both at the county and the city level. We have this issue at the county about housing, where monies are being spent now to buy a number of motels, and some people are complaining, and I can kind of understand this. There's like several million on the table, and it looks like, say, for a motel that's got 114 rooms, it looks like instead of the whole property being sold, it's being priced out so that they're charging several $100,000 for each room, which is totally ridiculous. It should just be a property purchase. And
Yeah.
at the end of all that money, they're only going to have about 300 additional housing spaces for the homeless, which at this point is in excess of 8,000 on the street. And so we've got a lot to look at. There's a fear right now because of the debt foreclosure. If they renege on it, it looks like it will impact the feeding program in San Diego. The food bank and Feeding San Diego have increased lines, based on the economy. The prices are up. More people are there, more military people looking for relief, and we're going to be without the resources to do that. So these are serious times beyond just who the candidates are running for office. And I would advise people to look very closely at the candidates. We made an early endorsement And I gave the rationale for it. At the time, I made the endorsement based on the fact that the fourth supervisorial district includes the fourth city council district, which is represented by President Pro Tem Monica Montgomery Stepp. And so I looked at it from the standpoint that if she was able to get the position, she's already representing a large portion of the people that live there. Well, we don't know how that's going to go now because all kinds of politics are getting into the picture. And I'm not going to fight with the politics. We want to look at some results and see who's going to put on their big boy shoes, rise above the petty stuff, and look at the needs that the people have.
Yeah, and I really want to push the fact that this is politics and not petty ticks. You know, we got to stop being so petty and so sensitive about everything, and we need to literally make sure in the end that everything is going to be apropos for the betterment of our community. So I want to step back to the national real quick, Dr. Warren, and I just want to, can you break down this whole national debt? Because it to me, it's just to me, I'm going to say it just seems like Michael Tyson would say, it just seemed ludicrous to me. It don't help the Democrats or the Republicans for us to go into the debt ceiling and not increase it and everything else. It's ludicrous. Why are we even having this conversation?
Well, I think the easiest way to understand it, because most people don't really get economics the way we want to. I didn't really get a lot about economics when I was taking it in school, but I got through it. I think the best way to describe it is that look at America as a credit card, and that the credit card has a limit on it, and that the credit card has already made a number of charges that are out there, and the billing cycle hasn't run yet. But those debts are going to come due on the day that the bill is supposed to be paid so that the card can continue to be in use. And so if you can't pay what's due when it's done, well, the credit cards, the charging privileges get suspended. With the national debt, what happens is there's a bigger ripple effect because we go through a whole scenario where we can't make payroll, supposedly. We can't do Social Security. Government jobs are gone because government can't pay people. Interest rates go up. Our credit rating around the world drops because, you know, if you have bad credit and you go out to buy a vehicle, if you had good credit, you might be at 4 or 5%. If your credit is bad and you got a credit score of maybe 400 or something, they're going to charge you 20 or 25% interest. And so that's the punishment for being a risk. And so the nation can move into a risk category. We were downgraded once before. One of the keys here is that many people feel that the president can play the card of the 14th Amendment, which of course gave us equal protection and all of those rights that we enjoy, but it had a reference to a national debt of the country not being something that would be ignored. And so it's possible that the president could pay the debt. But the worst thing is that we're seeing the Republican Party hold the obligation that we have to pay this debt or raise the ceiling, which allows us to have. It's like you got a $5,000 limit on your credit card, and when you can't pay, instead of cutting you off, the bank gives you another $2,000 or $3,000 so you can spend more money. But you're still not paying what. But the fact that you have a high credit limit there helps raise your overall rating in terms of what you have. So this is the scenario that we're in right now. And a lot of people aren't going to be concerned about all of that. But I think there's a sinister issue here. The right-wing conservative Republican element, the Trumpers of the world, the people who got Proud Boys and the guns and all those things, they want to see the government collapse because they see a collapse of the government, a shutdown, as a clarion call for them to rise up and take over the country. And this is how we move from a democracy to, a totalitarian state, which most of us still can't spell or understand. So it behooves us to start paying attention beyond our trip to the grocery store or the liquor store or to the mall to see what we're going to buy next. it's a good time to hold on to what you have in terms of looking at where you're about to go.
So one of the things that they said that even though if they get in the last hour the approval and the debt ceiling go higher, it still will take 10 days to get it into position. So how does that happen? And again, why are we even having this discussion if we say America the beautiful, the home of the brave, we're all in it together?
We're having this discussion because until this matter is done, it is a priority conversation and an issue that overrides so many other things. We have people in this country wondering how can we be on the verge of our government collapsing at the same time we're spending billions with the Ukraine to fight the Russians. And yet we can't do a SNAP program or feed people here or get health care for folks who are losing it based on all of the changes. That's where the issue comes because the American people do not understand the compartmentalizing of the budget. That monies are obligated for certain things, and that is not the freedom of the president to just move dollars around. That's why dollars are a line item. That's why we even have the Office of Management and Budget in the federal government that was created in 1976 because people were afraid that the Congress had no way of looking at the particular budgets that were being brought by cabinet departments for funding. And that was to be what we have in San Diego is the IBA, the Independent Budget Analyst, who looks at what the issues are and advises the city council and the mayor from a nonpartisan objective standpoint. And so we really have to take time to pay attention to what we're up against.
So let me ask you a question. DeSantis has jumped into the race officially now. So we got the orange man and the dingbat and all the rest of them in the race now. I'm concerned. Everybody said, well, he's 30 points behind Donald Trump. Well, Donald Trump been running for 3 years.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? So he's going to have time to catch up. The concerning thing is that just recently for the Labor Day weekend, the NAACP issued a warning for African Americans to stay out of Florida because it is not conducive to their safety.
Well, that's true, but they didn't just encourage African Americans to stay out of Florida. They also encourage LGBTQ. They encourage Latinos. They encourage migrants. They encourage people working. They encourage all of these people to stay out of Florida because of all these crazy laws that are being passed down there. And so that's the real issue. I think DeSantis' effort kind of backfired on him. It didn't come off as great as he wanted to. But the real danger here is, okay, you had Tim Scott this week. He jumps in the race. Nikki Haley's already in the race. Well, Nikki Haley, when she was governor of South Carolina, appointed Tim Scott to the Senate. Now they're running against each other. Mike Pence still hasn't come forward. We know that he probably will. Asa Hutchinson is there, but he's conservative, and people wondering where he is. The bottom line, with all of these people coming forward in the Republican Party, it increases Donald Trump's chances of getting reelected. The dream thing to have, if you are running in the race and you can get a lot of unknowns or other people to split the vote, they enhance your opportunities. They also enhance the opportunity for Biden to get reelected, but people are still afraid of Biden, and Biden is not doing what he should be doing with the positive publicity for what he's already done.
Yeah.
The people are not as much afraid of Biden as they're afraid of Kamala Harris becoming president if he should miss a heartbeat. And that's what's the scary thing. And so how do we get this done without, alienating and making it worse? And you sure can't have a ticket that doesn't include her. Black women have played too major a role in politics at this point. And we got to look at what's happening here in California. If Dianne Feinstein misses a heartbeat or steps down, and the governor appoints anyone other than Barbara Lee, he can kiss black votes goodbye.
Yeah. Well, here's the real thing, and I think it's simply this. all due respect to Kamala Harris, I think that she has to step up. I think that if she wants to be considered a true contender and somebody that can really help the party, she is going to have to step up and be visible. And I want to say needs to be unapologetically black. You know what I'm saying? I've seen things that she has done, things that I agree with and things I don't agree with. But the one thing about it is that you cannot go wrong if you're unapologetically yourself. You know what I'm saying? You can't do something for everybody else, but then when it comes down to African Americans, we play it safe. We got to stop doing that.
Well, I don't think she's ever been unapologetically black, okay? And she wasn't proud of the fact that she went to Howard until she ran for president and then decided that that was a trump card that you needed to play. And so we saw this year who was there speaking at Howard, the president was. But Joe Biden, he's consistent. When Barack Obama was president, he never went to the annual NAACP meeting. He wouldn't go. But Joe Biden was there, and Joe Biden has a lifetime membership in the NAACP.
Yeah.
I doubt if Obama does. And so Kamala Harris and Obama, they're kind of similar in the sense that they got some black in them and they got some other stuff with them. And black people are trying to give them a pass out of respect and appreciation. But there were things that Harris didn't do as Attorney General. I remember specifically there was a case of a young lady here who had been caught up in sex trafficking, and a pimp had abused her, and in desperation she had killed him. They started a campaign to get her clemency and to overturn it because in the women's circle it became apparent that she became a poster child for abuse in terms of what had happened. Kamala Harris allowed the district attorneys in Riverside County to go beyond the amount of time that they had to respond when she could have made a decision, and she just extended it indefinitely. But it took the governor coming after her to actually free this lady.
Yeah.
And she has a history of not being that concerned. And I think people see her as laid back, black when it's convenient. They're not excited about her husband. I don't know whether he's just second gentleman or he's got a chaperone her in terms of what she does. And yeah, she will get elected and support just as Obama did, because we are forgiving people and we try to salvage what we can. We're not ruthless about that. But I think girlfriend already had a whole bunch of passes. I wouldn't want to see her as president.
Well, I'm just saying, I'm just being honest. I've said it before. I voted for Michelle. And Obama just happened to be married to her. But I voted for her because I saw a difference, and like I said, I wish I could see the same thing in Kamala and her mate.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying that he's a bad guy or anything, but I'm saying that when we get into politics, when we get into this, we have to realize that we have to represent first and foremost the people that we're here to represent, but we also have to be true to who we are. Again, I'm a big black African American dude that loves people. Now, I'm going to fight for my cultural group consistently because of the fact that we're always underserved, underrepresented, and we always find ourselves always being the ones that compromise and always looks to be just in everything. And I'm like saying, but every other cultural group, every other entity, when they get in the door, they prop it wide open for all of their culture and all of their people. We're one of the few people that say, well, let's just be fair. And I'm like saying, at some point, we got to say, you know what? Yeah, let's be fair, but let's not then. It's like this, and Dr. Warren, and you'll understand why I'm saying this. It's like you are the owner of the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. Your children should not be penalized because you have to be the voice of the people. You know what I'm saying? They should have a voice too.
I think you're right, but from 60 years in politics and being around when things like the Congressional Black Caucus was created, watching the number of blacks go from 0 to 60 or so on the Hill, and seeing state and local government change, one of the sad things I have observed too often is that blacks who are in positions of leadership become afraid to do or say something for black people for fear that they're going to be accused of showing favoritism to their own kind. And yet everybody else shows favoritism to their own kind. Okay? And there's nothing wrong with being proud of where you come from and giving some help to where it needs to be. But we just don't seem to have that, and maybe it's because we haven't had enough experience, being around the big house or in the big house or whatever it is. We just don't get it, and it bothers me because I've seen black people who were strong vocal folks when they were on the podium and they were out there with the masses, and the moment they sat down in the room behind closed doors with a room full of white people, they start stuttering and stumbling and not being. It's always embarrassing to me. Maybe I missed all of that because I grew up in a room full of white folks, knowing who I was with black people who knew who they were, and so we didn't have that problem. We didn't have to feel inferior. Every time I ever been in the White House, I was there because I believe I belonged there.
Exactly.
And I wasn't looking at the walls and the ceilings and wondering who put the drapes up and what kind of china was in the cabinet.
Yeah.
And just a month or so ago when I was at the White House again for a couple of hours, I had another generation of us with me who was still in awe being there rather than understanding if you're in this place, which is the people's house, then this is a time to take care of business, not to be playing tourists.
Exactly.
And
you're there because you belong.
Yes.
And see, as I say, you have to walk into places and literally take charge. Where they say, where we step is holy ground. So when we come in, we have to act that we are God sent and God ordained. And if God has given us this opportunity to be in leadership, let's go about leadership in the most progressive way that we can. And we can't please everybody, but the one thing we can do is when it's all said and done, we did a job and get it well done. Now, I'm going to change subjects because, we got all these politics going on.
Okay.
We got national and everything else. But I want to ask the question, what is your thoughts on Jerry Springer?
Well, maybe Dr. Thompson, you have to let people know what Jerry Springer did, because Jerry Springer turns out, as I understand, he fathered a couple of black kids, and he had one of those black affairs, and he didn't do what he should by them. And when they did the post-mortem reading of his will, as I understand, he gave everything he had to these two black daughters because he felt bad that he hadn't taken care of them. Did I misrepresent it?
A male and a female.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was two of them.
But the thing about it is, I guess he decided to do his last will and testament and leave it to his attorney to unveil it.
Yes.
And so the attorney he followed the rules. After he passed and everything, he brought the four children on a Zoom, and Jerry said, "Look, basically, I was a coward. I was married, and I fell in love with a woman. And by the looks of the children, she was African American.
Yes.
And he fell in love with her and fathered a child. Now, normally you father a child, you fall in love, you get out of love, you divorce, whatever. But somehow a second child came. But the current wife said, "Oh, no, I forbid you to do this. And if you want life to be as is, this is what you're going to do." So basically he was saying that because he knew that he had betrayed his wife and everything else, but he was in love with the other woman, that he did not see the children. But he did take care of them. But they were deprived of having a father in their life and the benefits of being a Springer and the whole 9 yards. And so the gist of the whole thing is that he says, which was like a trip, he says, "I've always told my daughters, I've given you the opportunity to make millions of dollars, and I hope that you have, because I'm going to leave you." I think he left them the house.
Yes.
And he said, "But for all the other properties," and he started naming the different states and everything, "I leave to my children that did not get to spend time with me. Right. To all my liquid assets and unliquid assets, my bank accounts and everything, I leave it to these children." And the son is like, "Oh my God, what's really going on here?" They're really tripping. The daughter is grabbing her hair, and and everything like that. Like, I can't believe it. And
it's like a Jerry Springer show.
Yeah. Right? And then all of a sudden it was like, His one daughter just got up there. She said an expletive and she got off the line. And the other one just said, well, I guess it's true. Black lives do matter. And I'm like, wow.
I told you it was another Jerry Springer show.
Yeah,
Right?
it was wild. So, we see this and what's the impact? Does it vindicate the children and the woman? What's what's our take on this whole thing?
Oh, well, Dr. Thompson, it's some things it gets to be hard for us to talk about. But I think history, there's an expression in Latin that covers this. And the Latin expression is res ipsa loquitur. And res ipsa says the matter speaks for itself. And
Okay.
so I think in this instance, the matter does speak for itself in terms of who he was, how he felt, where his heart was, and what the byproduct of. It also reminds you of that movie that Halle Berry and them did, Babs, about my Black
Yeah.
American princesses, and how the rich old white guy left everything to them, and they took off and opened shops and did all kinds of things. So it's some of that, but it's not new to us. The former senator from South Carolina, he was a staunch segregationist, and turns out he had a black daughter by the housekeeper, and let us not forget Jefferson and all of these people, because the daughters of the American Revolution had a great big falling out when history suggested that Thomas Jefferson's daughters were black, and if they were black, they had a right to be a part of the DAR. And then, the DAR was the one group that would not allow Marian Anderson in the 40s to sing there because she was black. And so the issue goes on, and that's a part of the battle we have in America today, because fearful white people have bought into the replacement theory. They are afraid of the blackness and the people of color that they see surfacing and doing all kinds of things,
Mm-hmm.
and they're feeling that they're being pushed out, just like the old white man who shot the young boy in the head for knocking on his door when he thought he was at
Yeah.
the right house to pick up his brother.
Yeah.
And let us not forget, if we're going to talk about, because see, this is the underlying issue in America. This issue is greater than the economy. It is the essence of the politics. It's the foundation on which Donald Trump stands with all of his spoken and unspoken racism.
Mm-hmm.
And it all comes down to make America great again. Really? You mean make America white again? And that day is gone. It's gone in terms of childbirth. It's gone in terms of numbers. And so what's happened historically? If we look historically, every time there was a major push forward, there was a backlash that came to stop it. Mm-hmm. We're talking about now adding another black woman from Delaware as the third woman to ever serve in the U.S. Senate. Mm-hmm. Well, let us not forget that B.K. Bruce and Hiram Revels were two black senators from the state of Mississippi. Mm-hmm. Can you imagine how much that bothered Mississippi? Because what's his name, who was a congressman from Mississippi, he hasn't been able to get elected to the Senate yet. And so it's like this is our last covenant position, and we just can't have this overrun, because if we do, then they'll start telling white people, remember, what is his name, W.G. Griffin's about America, The Wealth of Nations, and the racist movie that showed blacks sitting in Congress eating watermelon and throwing chicken bones across the room at everybody and saying, look what they done to our government. This stuff is just as real as it can be. Mm-hmm. And these people believe it, even if we don't and we know better. They do. And that's the problem. And my last comment, Dr. Thompson, I know I'm going away with this, but let us not forget what just happened in New York. Daniel Penny killed Jordan Neely. He put him in a chokehold, and he knew what a chokehold would do, because it wasn't that long since George Floyd was killed by Chavis in the policeman in a chokehold. And while we was trying to decide the medical examiner says it's a homicide, which means somebody ought to be arrested right now. Let's not forget the other white people who held his legs and everything while he was being choked to death. As if that's not enough, now what happens? This white boy has 41,000 people give him over $2 million, and he's loaded with internet messages of thank you, good job, keep up the good work, and the whole bit. Okay, so what does that do in me? That takes my mind back to Billie Holiday singing Strange Fruit. And the strange fruit hanging from the tree was black men. Mm-hmm. And so we might look like we move forward, but we still got a lot of pullback. And we need to remember the history if we're going to fight so we don't repeat itself. Wow, yeah. I didn't mean to give you all of that, but oh, man.
But you know, one of the things about it, Dr. Warren, is that we cannot afford as African-American people and people of color to be in the us for no more category. There's so many people that are only focusing on their riches, their way, and things that benefit them, but they don't look at the greater good or even the responsibility that we have as a people to continue to move forward. Now, I'm not saying that we exclude other people. I'm saying that we need to be inclusive of wanting to see us all do well. One black millionaire is not suffice when we used to have a whole city and a whole state full of people that were very, very well off. You know what I'm saying? Whole communities. But we have seen them break down and demise. And it's almost like it's okay to have one black millionaire and then 150 poor people. You know, a couple of middle class folks and a whole bunch of poor people. But when do we start seeing each other and look at each other and say, I want you to be well off and you to be well off. I want you to get a house. I want you to get a house. We have to change our mindset, you know, and I'm going to say this even for us as Christian people. We have to change our mindset that we just can't always say that we're being so fair that we're unfair to ourselves.
Well, Dr. Thompson, as you were speaking, my mind went back to Lyndon Baines Johnson in 1960. I believe it was, so whenever, maybe it was later than that in terms of after Kennedy was killed. But in 60, he was in the Senate, and he spent 12 years in the Senate. And Johnson made this statement. He says that if you take a poor white man and you show him a Negro or a colored person that is beneath him, he will be so busy thinking about how much better he is than that person that he won't even be aware of what's being done to him. And if you really stroke him and tell him that he's better than that black man, he says, not only will you hid your hands in his pockets, taken from him while he was looking at the black man, he said, now he'll empty his pockets and give it to you. Yeah. Because they need the racism to justify them beyond their own personal failure. Yeah. And there's no reason for a poor white person to be in America because they ain't got to fight color.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah, and one of the things about it, and, you know, we have classism, we have sexism. There are a lot of isms that impact us as individuals. But the one thing that have impacted us a lot is lazyism, you know what I'm saying, and fakeisms. And I want to say that because so many people, you know, the whole thing, fake it until you make it. How about let's just make it? You know, because a lot of us are buying things and wearing things and trying to accumulate things to make us look as if we're successful, but we have leveraged ourselves to the point that we put ourselves in a poorhouse. I would tell people this, you know, consistently. I would rather have non-name brand clean clothes that fit well on me than the latest name brand out there and have money in my pocket than being broke, wearing somebody else's name, promoting somebody else and making somebody else rich.
Well, we don't even think about that part though. But you know, the archive says what's past is prologue. As you're speaking, I'm remembering that some years ago on Capitol Hill, someone sent a poem in to a member of Congress, and they sent the poem with a picture of some black folks sitting by the creek fishing. And the words to the poem went like this: "Oh, say can ye see by dawn's early light, how we sit by the creek waiting for them fishes to bite. And here we sit with nary a care, waiting for our checks and that damn welfare. Now, people will laugh at that and think it's funny, but it's not funny because you're gonna make black people look bad who are receiving some help, but you got white folks with subsidies, which is their word for welfare. The Bureau of Land Management got white folks who have leased thousands of acres of land for $50 or $100 a year, raising all kind of cattle like Yellowstone, not paying any taxes on the land because it belongs to the government. You got people getting subsidies for agriculture, the dairy industry, the meat industry, the honey industry. All of these industries are being subsidized, but you're going to go over and try to switch the image from that money, just like Johnson said, focus on the old black man, and you can steal whatever they got.
Well,
And so I want us to become conscious of what I just said because so many of us are not, you know.
and one of the things is that if you know your history, you know your greatness. And just let's be real with it, Dr. Warren. There are more Caucasian people, white people on welfare than there are blacks or Hispanics.
Demographically, yes.
So we need to be very clear that when you go after welfare, you actually go after your very own, because there are more whites on welfare than there are blacks or Hispanic. But it's always demonized as blacks and Hispanics or Latinos and things of that nature, or immigrants that are on welfare. So we need to really understand that. But then there's that other piece that we should never get comfortable with somebody providing us a welfare check and then say, well, I'm living good. No, it is there to make it well for you for a season, but it should not be your permanent income.
Well, let's put it in the context as belong. It's called social insurance, okay? And there are several components to social insurance. I used to run a center on this topic at a think tank in Washington many years ago. Unemployment insurance, workers' comp, Social Security, aid to families with dependent children. All of these things were a part of the American safety net intended to help people at times that they needed help. None of this was intended to be permanent. What happened in this country was that because of racism, black people got trapped in the welfare. Well, how did they get trapped? Well, first of all, let's look at something that happened in the South, and Moynihan and them did it in their report. A black man couldn't find a job, and if he couldn't find a job, the family couldn't get welfare if he was living in the house. So he had to move out of his house, and then they would come around at night, peeping in the windows, looking under the beds to see if he was there, giving them less to live on that they were giving the same white people who were in the same condition getting more. And so you created a generational cycle that took place. We need to understand that, so that, if anything, a black woman was phenomenally strong. She held up the family. She often worked, just like, life ain't been no crystal stairs, that she understood that. And not every father was a
deadbeat.
A deadbeat. In this city, I can think of at least 3 black fathers that I know who raised their children by themselves without the mother, and did a phenomenal job of not only raising them, but getting them through school, sending them to college, educating them, and helping them get on their way in life. So we just can't be assuming that everybody is bad. The important thing is we need to look at, we must go beyond whatever is put in front of us, and not look at what's in front of us as what's going to stop us.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that I say to parents and people that have received the system, there's no shame in receiving it, especially when you use it to elevate yourself to an area where you don't need it anymore. You know what I'm saying? I've been working since I've been 9 years old, and I've given into Social Security and unemployment and everything else, and it is for the betterment. I've been very blessed to not have to, really need any of those things at this point in my life. But as I get older, I'm going to enjoy, if it's still around, praise the Lord, a Social Security check. I think that I put in the time to get a little bit of benefits from it,
Right.
and that's the outcome of work. You know what I'm saying? Let me before we end off tonight, Dr. Warren, I have to talk about this because I want to preface it by saying this. If we're going to make decisions or make changes, we must be fair all across the board.
Yes.
Now, the Los Angeles Dodgers have a Pride Night. And yes, I'm talking about Pride. All the cities are celebrating Pride, I believe, in the month of June. In the month of June, which is also Black Music Month, just to let everybody know. But the Dodgers have a Pride Night where they give out awards and honors to organizations in the LGBTQIA community that have been activists or things of that nature. They invited an organization called the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence. These are men that are dressed in drag as nuns, and they have their face painted, and they look like clowns. You know what I'm saying? And they have provocative, disrespectful names like Sister Porn. You know, and they were going to honor them, and then Marco Rubio and the Catholic Church said, you know, we feel like this is disrespectful to the Catholic ministry, the Catholic faith and religion, and we don't think you should honor somebody that would disrespect our culture, our belief system, the way they're doing. So the Dodgers, you know, respectfully pulled it back and said, you know what, we're going to uninvite them because you're right. That is being disrespectful to a cultural group, a religious group, and we're not going to let that happen. But then the backlash came from the LGBTQIA community and other organizations saying that that's unfair. They should be able to come and disrespect the Catholic Church and the nuns and everything else, and we should be okay with it. And that troubles me, Dr. Warren, because my whole thing is that if we're going to say we should not disrespect the LGBTQI community, we still cannot then disrespect the religious community. So it's like I'm saying, saints of God, religious people, will we ever stand up and be respected as a faith-based organization? And why can't we say that we feel disrespected and that it's heartbreaking and it's disrespectful? And why don't we tell the Dodgers, well, you know what, Mr. Dodger and the owner of the Dodgers, we're going to stop coming and we're going to stop spending our money, because if you're afraid of their money, then you should really be afraid of our money if we really are living this godly life.
Well, Dr. Thompson, everything that you just said is in the Bible. These are the last days. The word says in the last days, men will be lovers of themselves. We see that. Everything that they're doing in terms of the dress and the whole bit, and holding themselves out to be godly when they're not, and all of those things are in the scripture. We are not called to battle those choices that people make. The scriptures make us aware of the extent to which society will change. And what we have the opportunity to do is to stand up, because Jesus said, upon this rock I'll build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And the church is the people who stand for the principles that Christ put out for believers. And so we get confused in the world and we get baited because we want to argue with people who don't share our faith. The very tenet of this country and the First Amendment is built on the right for people to worship as they choose. I won't spend time arguing with the Sisters of Perpetual anything or porn or whatever it is, because I'm reminded of these famous words that says, for evil to advance, all good has to do is nothing. And so we have an opportunity to vote with our dollars. We don't have to be in arguments. We don't hate people who are different, because God loved the sinner. And we need to understand that the concept of sin, in terms of what it is, means that any action that is contrary to God's commandment is considered disobedience, and then disobedience itself becomes sin. And so we're not setting people up to be better than folks because the word also says all have sinned and fallen short. So why do we argue with the Dodgers? As you just say, just don't go. Just don't go. If you vote with your dollars, if you don't agree and the other people are trying to placate an element of their market, you don't have to be in market competition. You just need to not spend your money in that market if that's where you feel. And let us understand something from the very beginning, and I remember when it happened some 40, almost 50 years ago in Washington, D.C., the first gay pride parade was held on Father's Day, okay? Of all the times, Father's Day in June, and we had this, and we have grown now. When you look at what happens in San Diego during the month of June and the gay pride, we get over 200,000 to 300,000 people who come here, and they parade and city officials, and so we don't need to go downtown and argue with them. You know, if you disagree, take your group and be in prayer. The word says that the fervent prayers out of James of a righteous person prevaileth much.
Yeah.
We fight. The word also tells us the battle is not ours, but the battle is the Lord. Okay? And so then when we start living the word, we don't have to get upset about what the Dodgers are doing in the game. I never cared for the Dodgers, the Padres, the Chargers. I don't care what any of them do. I don't own no stock in them.
Yeah. The reason why it disturbs me is because every time we want to do something as a Christian body, have a March for Christ or have a major event that involves gospel music or things of that nature, there's always a kickback that, well, that's not for everybody's not this way, everybody's not that way. But the argument comes in is that we can say that when it comes to quote unquote religious activities, but we won't say it the same thing about LGBTQIA or others. I'm saying let's be fair across the board. And if we're not going to be fair across the board, then let's stop putting the board up.
Well, we're not going to be fair across the board. You know, it's easier to have an LGBTQ club in a high school than it is a Bible club. And I mean, that's it. So I don't blame the people blocking. I blame the ones who don't come together. You know, look at that coach whose case went to the Supreme Court, who insisted on having prayer on the field with his team. And the court ruled in his favor, in effect said it was okay to pray. His prayer was not a manifestation of a school decision. It was a personal decision that was made. And there's nowhere in the Constitution that says that you can't worship. The wording of the First Amendment says freedom of religion shall not be abridged. That word means that there will be no laws made to block freedom of religion. So we're not requiring anyone to be a Muslim or a Jew or Hindu or Buddhist. We're just saying that the state can't make a law outlawing or declaring, as England did when it created the Church of England, that that's going to be the religion of the state.
And you know, the funny thing about it, the Bible says, "If my name be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me." Now realize that he was praying to the side, and those that wanted to come and pray with him came and prayed with him. Not everybody first started off with that prayer, but before they looked around, all of a sudden people like saying, "Oh, wait a minute, there's something over in that prayer circle that I want to get." And so it started growing and growing and growing, and to the point that everybody wanted to be in the circle.
Well, this country has a history of one or two men or women standing up in prayer and people joining. And they didn't join because they were looking for a club. They joined because that missing piece within them connected with what was being prayed over and done, and they saw the benefit. That's all we have to do. The enemy wants you to argue with them. All we have to do is just be prayerful in terms of going forward. That's the way Gandhi, beat the British Empire and brought freedom to India, which later split into India and Pakistan. It was nonviolence. That's what King did. King looked at Gandhi. Gandhi looked at Jesus. And here we are today. But it was prayer that was the key in the civil rights movement. It wasn't just people marching.
Amen.
And we don't want to pray these days. So you get what you ask for, right?
Well, Dr. Warren, we have exhausted our time. And I want to say thank you. I'm loving your signature hat. You know, we might have to go get a whole endorsement deal on that signature hat. But this is from the desk of the editor with Dr. John Warren. Thank you for tuning into our conversation. Please stay tuned to the San Diego Voice and Viewpoint. It is coming out fresh off the press on this Thursday. and
Tomorrow morning.
tomorrow
it'll-
morning.
Yes.
And you can get it online
Tomorrow afternoon.
Tomorrow afternoon. So we want you to stay tuned. A People Without a Voice Cannot Be Heard. Again, this is from the Desk of the Editor with Dr. John Warren. Any final words, sir?
Good night. God bless.
God bless you all.